Good evening, everyone. I will call to order the City of Laguna Beach Planning Commission of January 15th, 2025. May I have roll call, please?
Commissioner Goldman.
Here.
Commissioner Whiten.
Here.
Commissioner Dubin.
Present.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg.
Here.
Chair Sadler.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a period of time where we have open to the public for public communications. If anybody would like to speak to the Planning Commission on any item not on tonight's agenda, but under the Planning Commission's general purview, now would be the time to do so. Does anybody want to make any public communications? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of the draft minutes from the November 20th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting and the December 4th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Would any member of the public or any other commissioner like to pull any of those items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman.
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin.
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg.
Yes.
Chair Sadler.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to our public hearings for the evening. Our first item is item 5.1. And the applicant is the City of Laguna Beach. And this is a proposal to find a general plan consistency. And I believe Commissioner Dubin.
Yeah, I have to recuse myself because I live in the project.
Okay, we will wait for Commissioner Dubin to remove himself from the council chambers.
And then for the record, Chair, it's due to his financial interest in his residence. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And our city manager from our city manager's department, Jennifer Savage, will be making the presentation here for us tonight.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Before you this evening is a request for a general plan determination for two properties on Laguna Canyon Road, 2307 Laguna Canyon Road and 2535 Laguna Canyon Road. They have zoning designations of M1A, or industrial, and RH, residential hillside. The staff is recommending that you can make the general plan consistency determination as noted in your staff report, including the following reasons. That the purpose of the property acquisition is to acquire the properties, preserving artist's workspace, and perhaps in the future modifying the uses to provide artist work live space. This concludes staff presentation, and we are available for any questions.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions of staff at this point?
Yes. Jennifer, there are currently people who are living and working in these spaces. Are they grandfathered to continue to do that?
No, they are not. There is one caretaker's unit that was permitted at 2307 Laguna Canyon Road.
And so what is the process then? Is it a CUP process?
Correct.
Okay.
The zoning does allow artist work live spaces with a conditional use permit.
Okay, so they'll have to come back as a property or individual units?
They could do either.
Okay, thank you.
Our purview tonight is, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm on. Our purview tonight is merely to determine if it's consistent with the plan and nothing beyond that?
Acquisition of the property, yes.
Okay, and so just out of curiosity, are acquisition terms and conditions already in existence, or is this first step towards moving in that direction?
Good question. There has been several steps along the way. The council held a workshop in November of last year, and just last night approved purchase and sale agreements, authorized the approval of those through the city manager's office for both properties. So we're still in the beginning. We still have some time to go through, but towards the beginning, but not the first step.
Okay, so this is actually imminent. Imminent being over the course of time that it takes to get through the contract and closing up.
Hopefully. There's always a chance that the contracts would not go through, that we wouldn't close on the property, but it is our hope to be able to preserve these artist workspaces.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Is title going to be held by the city in general, or is this a relationship between this transaction and a proposed housing trust?
Thank you for the question. Our goal is to partner with a third-party nonprofit to hold the properties until a Laguna Beach Community Land Trust is in a position to acquire the properties.
And just out of curiosity, what is the status of that land trust being created?
We are just starting it. Yesterday evening, the council considered a community engagement plan, and our outreach will, after their review of it last night, will occur February 26th through 28th. The city will start to put out communications regarding those outreach events over the next few weeks.
So the idea is this would be the first acquisition of the trust.
Correct.
Thank you.
Great, well, thank you. I'll open the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and go to Commissioner discussion and comments. Commissioner Whiten, would you like to start?
Well, I can make the findings that this is consistent with the general plan.
Commissioner
Same.
Kellenberg.
Yeah, I'm absolutely supportive. This is one small step for man, for the city in a very long history of trying to put together a community land trust to help hold and retain properties that are important to the affordability and the maintenance of the artist community in the city. So I'm highly supportive of this action.
As I am as well. Again, our role is limited to just finding for general plan consistency, and we are just to evaluate the location, purpose, and extent of this proposed acquisition. And I believe the staff report lays that out clearly, and I agree with that. I also agree with the staff analysis that no coastal development permit is required for this, and that meets the required exemptions from CEQA. So if somebody would please make a motion.
I move that we adopt the resolution finding the proposed purchase of the properties at 2307 and 2535 Laguna Canyon Road consistent with the city's general plan and finding the said action exempt from CEQA.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin.
Absent.
I
Excused himself.
apologize. Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg,
Yes.
Chair Sadler.
Yes. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll wait a moment for Commissioner Dubin to return, and then we'll move on to our next item, 5.2. Okay, item 5.2 is a number of design reviews and coastal development permits relating to lifeguard towers. And I believe our principal planner, Martina Caron, will be presenting this item for us tonight, along with Marine Safety Chief Kai Bon.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Sadler. As you noted, this is a request for design review and coastal development permit for 3 different lifeguard towers. Kai's going to introduce the project and I will follow up at the end of the presentation.
Thank you.
So once again, for item 5.2, we are proposing to remove existing lifeguard chairs and install newly enclosed lifeguard towers at 3 beaches within our city, one being Shaw's Cove, 9th Street, and 10th Street. So the fully enclosed towers on skids would replace the chairs that are currently in those positions. Those towers are staffed year-round by city staff every day, including Christmas. However, it is weather dependent. And the delivery by said towers will be done through a barge. So as you can see, the project location, the first one is Shaw's Cove. You can see that we have added some images of the enclosed towers in the prospective places, and the overhead map shows you the dot where they would be placed. So again, the first location is Shaw's Cove. The second is down at 9th Street Beach or Thousand Steps Beach, adjacent to the bottom of the stairway. And then the final location is at 10th Street Beach, towards the end of the beach. And again, currently in those positions, there are lifeguard chairs that are fully open and don't protect our city employees from the elements which they need to be protected from.
So in the staff report, it itemizes the requested entitlements this evening, which include design review applications and a coastal development permit. And the applications have been set up that each chair is requesting or requiring design review and a coastal development permit independently. So the staff report addresses the findings to be made for each chair and each design review and coastal development entitlement. It also identifies that the project is exempt based on a class 2, 3, and 11 exemption from the California Environmental Quality Act and CEQA. So the staff report details, and staff believes that all the findings can be made to support the requested entitlements, and by motion, which would be 3 separate motions for the 3 separate chairs, to approve the design review and coastal development permits for each project and find each said action exempt from CEQA. And that concludes my presentation. We're available for questions.
Great, thank you. I will start with a few questions. One is a kind of a broader general question. I know that we've been through the review of these lifeguard towers in the past, many times. And I guess one question is this particular type and style of lifeguard tower, is this new, or is this actual this type of lifeguard tower been used previously?
So the Surveyor Junior model is a model that has been approved by a previous planning commission and the city council. It is the same tower that we're using along all of our city beaches, aside from a few locations that still have the chair.
Okay. And the chairs in the past, you were saying that, that this is year round and not seasonal. And the chairs that were used in the past, they were used year round? Were they ever removed and then replaced for each season?
There are some locations where that is the case, but we're trying to get away from using fully open towers to giving the employee the enclosed tower so they can find protection from the elements. So in short, we're trying to phase the red chairs out and phase the enclosed Surveyor Junior towers in. In some cases, depending on the use of the beach, we do remove the towers from the beach. In these 3 locations that we're proposing tonight, they would be on the beach year round because we provide that lifeguard service year round, tower lifeguard service.
Okay, so these things are going to be, barged in, and the staff report went through the whole procedure about how that's going to happen and how, it's going to be done carefully to minimize the environmental impact and all that. But so once these things there, as you stated, they're going to remain there year round. What's their life expectancy? How many seasons or how long will these things last?
So the manufacturer provides a 12 to 15-year life expectancy for the actual tower. We've seen them last much longer after they've been certified from the vendor after 12 to 15 years. We've seen them last as long as 20 years, and they could be easily replaced with a similar process.
Okay. And then also we've recently approved what I would consider a more permanent lifeguard tower, the ones that were actually put on concrete pedestals or caissons or towers. Why are these different? Are we getting away from that? Was there a decision made that this is less impactful, or what was the reasoning behind that?
The intent and driven by the council through a previous strategic planning meeting was to get a report that addresses putting enclosed towers on caissons throughout the city. However, we do have employees on those beaches working today, tomorrow, and we would like to give them the coverage from the elements. And the quickest way to do it would be through putting the towers on skids because it doesn't require the same geological study, wave run up. To me, it's just a slightly quicker approval process that we're hoping to get through, whereas the much larger project would be to put them ultimately on a caisson.
Okay, and I believe the staff report pointed out that these are generally going to be located in the same location where the chairs are currently located. So,
yes, that's a great question. The intent is to put them exactly where the chairs are, so there isn't much of a difference.
Okay, and let me see what else. I'm sure that you're considering this, but where they're being located and stuff, are there any concerns about, them being susceptible to storm damage during, a high storm event, or, do they vary? I mean, what is the base elevation of these towers on the skids going to be compared to the sea level?
That might be, I would assume that they're very close to sea level, just as far as the specific height. I couldn't answer it for every location because we do have 3 that we're talking about now, but just generally throughout the city, we have 50 lifeguard towers. What I can tell you is that the skid will allow us to move the tower until we get the appropriate geological reports and wave run-up reports for the permanent caisson in the future.
And the staff report kind of goes into some detail, but some of the considerations when considering the coastal development permit deal with the mean high tide line and making sure that the towers are located inland of the mean high tide line. These towers are proposed in that location that helps minimize exposure to the surf and different storm events. However, we do also have a condition that requires that they're secured if there are storm events, so they can be moved in case there is a storm event or something like that to help make sure that the towers are preserved and maintained and minimize hazards.
Okay, so typically and initially, when they're placed on these skids in their new location, they're not specifically anchored in any way.
Correct.
They're just basically sitting on top and work. Gravity is doing
Correct.
its trick to
They wouldn't
hold them in
be,
place.
portable from a human perspective, but they are more portable than if they were on a caisson.
Okay, great. That answers my questions. Any additional questions, Commissioner Dubin or Commissioner Whiten?
When do you anticipate coming back for approval on the caisson version?
We're still working through the process with community development and public works to get those studies taken care of. So my wish list would be tomorrow, but that's not a reality. I would have to check with Public Works in order to determine that specific date, but it's something that we're going to discuss at the strategic planning meeting coming the 31st. We'll have more information then.
And is your intent to try to bundle as many as you can in one approval?
That was the direction from council.
And okay, good.
So, and just to reiterate that concept for the caissons is not just, it would include these towers, but also multiple other towers within the city. And it's still a conceptual plan and it hasn't really been reviewed and approved by council at this time.
Thank you.
Another question related to that is the ones that we did approve that are placed on caissons, is it basically the same lifeguard tower then, just on a caisson instead of being on the metal tower with skids?
It's exactly the same tower.
Okay, great. Thank
So
you.
you can recycle these.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin.
Yeah, a couple of questions in regards to the barge delivery. And I know that in coastal development permit number 2, it also kind of addresses this, but do you anticipate any environmental or disturbing kelp beds and that kind of thing? I mean, I know there's a lot more out there than there used to be, thanks to some of our other citizens who are protecting the kelp beds. But I'm just wondering if you're, how do you maneuver around those to drop these off on the beach?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And it was something that was very much considered when we were looking for bids for this project. We decided to, based on bids and being able to actually perform the job well, we went with a barge company called Curtin Marine, who has done work along our coastline before over the last few decades. They take into consideration many environmental elements, and even before they approach a beach, days before, weeks before, and maybe even a month before, but depending on the timeline, they actually dive the area, they snorkel the area. So they're very well versed on these beaches. They understand that our community is very environmentally sensitive, and they're taking that all into consideration. This project will be done in conjunction with Public Works, with Marine Safety. So we'll try to cover absolutely all of our bases when we approach this as far as the project phase goes.
Okay, thanks. I know this was probably already addressed, but if we had a really extreme high tide, obviously you would probably know about that before it actually happened. But would you be able to pull these closer to the cliff face in order to keep them from washing out to the sea?
So we actually have done that before. In these cases that we're talking about, 9th, 10th, and Shaw's, it's very difficult to get heavy machinery down there, as you know, based on the delivery method. So we're able to do it with pinch pry bars, where we're able to, it's a technique called row. We'd row it back towards the cliff, and we've actually tied them back using stakes before, if needed, and used temporary anchors to assure that they won't get destroyed by surf.
As far as construction, the staff report references construction, and I'm assuming that's just a little bit of grading to set the tower on. Is that accomplished by hand, or do you need actual, tractor or something down there to create a pad, so to speak?
So the answer is both.
Okay.
In some cases, we have used shovels to adjust the towers because they are on skids, and that's one of the benefits of having them on skids. However, the delivery method will be, there will be a tractor on that barge, and the tractor will actually bring
Oh, I
the
see.
tower onto the beach and assure that they are level, they are
Okay.
flat, and the skids are appropriately covered.
Okay. As far as site location, I was just looking at the 9th and 10th Street towers. Seem to sort of be, at least in the pictures, and I may be kind of wrong, but they seem to be sort of sitting out in the middle of the beach instead of tucked back by the cliff face or whatever. Is the reason for that so that the person, the guard who's there has a better sight line of the entire beach, or was that just because that's where the chair was before? And is there any reason that they couldn't be sort of tucked further back, so they're not just sitting in the middle of the sand?
Yeah, that's the best question. So the first consideration that we take is line of sight. And if we're able to effectively see the people that are closest to the berm and of course out farther in the water,
Right.
which was why some of these locations were picked. But historically speaking, it's been a location that's worked, and it's been a location that historically hasn't been affected by too much sand movement, tide, surf,
Got it.
etc. If they do need to be moved back, that's something that we can accomplish internally. However, I feel pretty confident that the positioning of these towers ticks both boxes, meaning that the lifeguard can effectively see the beach and protect it, and number two, that it will not be too affected by the elements.
Got it. And my last question is kind of an aesthetic one. I know that one or two of the newer towers have been. One was wrapped with a mural, and it was either Moss Street or
It's Moss.
Moss Street, and then I think there was another one that had rainbow something or other.
And the other one you're referring to is the Pride Tower down at Camel Point.
Right. So is that a program that may continue, or were those just one-off projects in terms of doing something more with them to sort of make them part of the art community?
Both of those projects were directed by council. The original approval was for the, it's kind of funny, but I think when the designer designed it, who is actually a resident from Laguna, the person that designed the Surveyor Towers, he named the color Laguna Sand after it was approved.
Oh, okay.
So Laguna Sand is the one that was approved. I think the Pride Tower and the tower at Moss Street were both specifically council projects driven through that arena. And I'm certainly open to suggestions, but what you have in front of you is what we're intending to put on the beach.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Goldman?
and I'm not sure this was in your questions, Ken, which were very extensive. Is the ultimate goal to have no open air stands all through Laguna?
Yes.
Okay, and so are these the last three?
No, there's quite a few more.
Okay.
These are the ones that we staff every single day. We have 3 levels of staffing in our department. Our peak staffing is summer staffing, so essentially the 4 months that we consider summer. And we do have 50 lifeguard towers out during that period of time. These 3 towers cover our base staffing, which is towers that we staff year round.
Okay, and that was my second question, was with regard to peak staffing. So you'll still, because I believe you do it on 9th Street, in the summer there's another stand added. And you'll continue to add temporary stands for the open air stands?
Correct, until the day comes where they are approved and we can put other Surveyor juniors on the beach.
So would that be the ultimate goal, consistent with having all of these?
That's
to be
correct.
Okay.
To provide consistency.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just curious, was there any kind of neighborhood outreach other than just the typical notification of a hearing?
Yeah.
No.
No, it was the notification through the posting.
And have you gotten any kind of input from the neighborhood on any of these? I assume they're in the same location, so there's like no
Yeah, the notices were posted on each tower, and they were, the radius, the mailer went out to the radius consistent with the residents within 300 feet and the tenants within 100 feet, and we haven't received any.
Received any
comments.
input, but okay, thanks.
Great. Well, thank you for those answers. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and go to commissioner comments. Commissioner
I
Goldman?
guess I'll start. Look, I think it's a great addition. I think it's good for the employees. I happen to live in the neighborhood of one of these. And so to your question, as a neighbor in the area, I think it's great. And it would be great to have this consistent across Laguna Beach as well. It's a good plan.
Yeah, I'm supportive. I think we went through this like a year or so ago when we approved a couple of the others and talked about location and heard the whole rationale for why you all think these are necessary. And it seems like you all know the business better than anybody. So, we definitely supportive.
Commissioner Whiten?
Yeah, what's not to support about this? I have nothing further to add.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to sun, being a very fair complected individual. So if I was a lifeguard, I would want to have the sun protection because, it's getting more intense and obviously, skin cancer is something that I would be concerned about, and I'm sure your staff is as well. So I'm very supportive of the idea of giving the guards all the sun protection they deserve and being able to be in an enclosed or at least shaded environment is a really the right move. So I'm very supportive.
As I am as well. It seems like we're moving in the right direction. It'd be nice if we get the permanent ones in. It's, supportive of the lifeguards. We have family friends who are currently lifeguards, Henry White and Nolan McConnell, amongst others. So, want to keep everybody safe and out of the exposure of the sun. So I don't have anything other to add, other than, I remember years ago on the design review board, some of these lifeguard towers were coming before us at that time. And one or more of the other design review board members were suggesting, we're an artistic community. Can't we make each one of these different? And, one's like a little tiki shack and and I thought, and my input at that point was, I think that the lifeguard towers should be clearly identifiable as lifeguard towers, and to have them, start getting crazy, different styles for each one might be a little confusing to the general public. So I support what's being proposed here tonight. And if somebody would like to make a motion for that.
I can do that. I move that we adopt a resolution approving design review 24-2669 and coastal development permit 24-2670. Adopt resolution approving design review 24-2685 and coastal development permit 24-2686. And adopt a resolution approving design review 24-2687 and coastal development permit 24-2688. And finding said action exempt from CEQA.
Thank you.
Second.
Second? Did you just second? All right. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman?
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg?
Yes.
Chair Sadler?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, we will be moving on to our next item, which is item 5.3, which is a sign permit for the Laguna Art Museum. And our planning technician, Claire Park, will be presenting this item for us tonight.
I have disclosure.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Disclosure.
I am acting as a planning commissioner tonight, although I am also a trustee of the museum and have vetted this with the city attorney that it's appropriate for me to be here.
Great. Thank you for that. Any other disclosures? No, seeing none. Okay. You can proceed.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Claire Park, planning technician. Item 5.3 is a sign permit request for a temporary wall signs at 307 Cliff Drive, or better known as Laguna Art Museum. The project is located within the CBD Visitor Commercial District of the downtown Specific Plan area. The museum is located on a corner at the Cliff Drive and North Coast Highway intersection. The proposed project are 2 temporary painted wall signs to honor Laguna Art Museum donors. One sign will be on the Cliff Drive and another one will be on the North Coast Highway. The proposed project does not meet the definition of a mural per zoning code. So in this case, it is classified as a signage. So the project was reviewed under the Art Organization Sign Regulation. And the specific code section grants the Planning Commission complete discretion over size, design, location, and duration of the signs, regardless of other provisions in the sign chapter. Both the temporary signs will be painted on the exterior building facades. The proposed sign facing the North Coast Highway will be 5 feet tall and 60 feet wide. The proposed sign on the Cliff Drive will be 5 feet tall and 45 feet wide. The proposed signs will be divided into multiple grids, with each grid available for purchase by the donors to sign or put their names. Each grid space will be approximately 6 inches tall and 12 inches wide. Donors can select a grid for their names or signatures, which will be painted under supervision of professional artists and muralists. The wall signs will be displayed for about approximately 3 to 4 weeks. After the display period, the wall signs will be painted over to match the building's existing colors, fully restoring the facades to their original appearances. Staff's recommendation is to adopt Resolution 24-2680 and approving the sign permit 24-2680 and finding said action exempt from CEQA. This concludes my presentation. I'm open for questions.
Great, thank you. Are there any commissioner questions of staff at this point?
You might have said this, and I'm sure it was in the report, but I missed it. What is the duration of the project?
It's going to be 3 to 4 weeks.
Should the applicant wish to extend the temporary use permit, how would they do that?
They would need to apply for a new sign permit unless the Planning Commission chooses to modify condition number 13, which essentially voids the sign permit 3 weeks after completion of the temporary signs. And at that time, the building would be returned to its pre-existing condition.
Does that mean at the time, 3 weeks is time from the time the last donor name is on the wall?
Correct.
Okay.
That would be at the time at which the staff would consider the mural to be completed, or the sign to be completed, excuse me.
So it could take a couple of years to get that last.
Yeah, it could take some time. So in other words, it's not a set time, it's a flexible. Is there a maximum?
There isn't a maximum per the sign code. The sign code actually, under the Arts Organization Code, specifically allows Planning Commission to have complete discretion of duration. So if Planning Commission feels like there should be a duration set, then we can make that resolution change.
Okay.
Correct, yeah, but as drafted, that condition is based off of the completion of the temporary sign. So if there is the, lengthy completion process, so that may be something that planning commission.
Is the
could
3
consider.
weeks set by ordinance, or is that requested by the applicant?
That condition was drafted to reflect the applicant's proposal.
Although the 3 weeks, I hadn't thought through that. The 3 weeks is fictitious.
And then regarding the process for the signs themselves, could you describe that? Is there any scaffolding involved? Is there any obstruction of the sidewalk? Is there anything that would interrupt the, flow around the museum on the public?
According to the application, the signs will be painted with the muralists and painters. But if the applicant has details on the operation plan, please feel free to share.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
There will be no Nothing in addition to.
Your name, please.
I'm Wendy Aird, and I'm a trustee for the Laguna Art Museum.
Thank you.
And there's nothing more than the paintbrush and the paint, and then the artists themselves that might be facilitating.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dubin?
All my questions are for the applicant, so we'll wait until they make their presentation.
Okay, I'm not sure if anybody's going to be able to answer this one. I remember a number of years ago, we reviewed and I believe approved something along the north coast facade of this building. There was a proposal to do some sort of changes along there. And I thought at one point there was a proposal to do some sort of artwork or something along that wall. Whatever happened with that proposal?
Good evening. I'm Julie Perlinley, Executive Director of Laguna Art Museum. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm only also supposing, I believe I know what you're speaking about, but on that wall there is an installed artwork. I believe it was for the removal of that artwork from the property. It still stands in place today. That is what I believe you're referring to.
Okay. And this new, and I kind of was missing that discussion about the whole time period and everything. So once the mural is completed, the plan is that it would remain there for 3 to 4 weeks. But am I hearing that the completion process of filling the mural with all the donors' names may take an extended period of time?
No, that's not our intent. If I could be more clear in what we're hoping to do, it's part of a beautification project that we're putting for the building, and the end result is to repaint the entire facility, not just to match or paint over what is being painted on to match the upper part of the building. So it's an outward-facing public project that's helping us to beautify the building. We're hoping to do the actual painting of the signs within 2, 3, 4 days, as a matter of fact, so not a large or lengthy amount of time. As much as we're excited about this project, we also realize that we want the building to sink back into looking as beautiful, a beautiful part of our community as possible. So in terms of the complicated question that was asked, I don't have the answer either, but I will defer to you, Anthony, on the timing.
Okay, and one space was 5 feet by 45 feet. The other one was 5 feet by 60 feet. And if my math's correct, so the one would have 450 spaces on it, and the other one would have 600 spaces on it. So you're looking at a total of 1,050 individual tile spaces for donors to buy. Is that correct?
Potentially,
Okay.
but we're going to be focusing first. We're going to be focusing first on the Cliff Drive side because that's more accessible. It's where people walk in, and there's not a lot of traffic and all, pedestrian and the rest. The Coast Highway side will be reserved to the extent we do get those extra donors, and we hope we do. But I would anticipate that primarily you'll see those signatures on the Cliff Drive side.
Okay, and again, I thought that the staff report could have been a little clearer on some of this stuff because it took me a while to figure out exactly what was going on here. So, but the signage is actually painted on the existing building wall, correct?
Yes.
And then after reading the application that was actually given in, that had a kind of a cover letter explaining the whole process of what was happening, that it kind of made more sense. It's like the idea was that the whole building was basically in need of being repainted. And so that kind of gave you guys the opportunities. As long as we're going to be repainting the whole building, why don't we do this kind of temporary signage thing while the painting's going on in the upper portion of the building, and then eventually this will be painted over in the same color as the rest of the building and we'll return to a uniformly painted building?
Yes, that's exactly correct. We're taking advantage of a unique opportunity before the final painting to creatively solicit for donations and bring those donors in, hopefully recognize them for the donations themselves and get some excitement and engagement, not only from the donors themselves, but from the community at large.
Okay. And I guess the last question would be for staff that If we were to approve this tonight, this isn't precedent setting in any sort of way. It doesn't create an ongoing ability for them to continue to do this on a yearly basis or anything like that.
Correct. It is specific to this fundraiser, I'll call it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have
This
a
is still to
few.
staff or to?
To either.
I have a couple. So
Commissioner Gibbon, go.
just so I can get clarification, this is a fundraiser to help repaint the entire building. Is that correct?
Yes. So back in November, we started something called Every Single One, which is a campaign to raise $1 million in order to beautify the building, as well as manage to some overhead costs during that period of time. And we're going to be looking at lighting, HVAC, sound, also including is painting inside and out. So it's all towards that end. The end of the campaign is April. And that's the reason for some of the duration, because we anticipate potentially doing something mid-March, and then we'll string it out to the end of the campaign, and that would be the period of time in which we would go to the final painting of the building itself.
So, and the grid, individual grid spaces measure 6 by 12 inches. Is that correct?
I think 6 by 12, there may be a maximum up to 8 to 24, just depending. We will grid it out either with chalk or with painter's tape.
Yeah, because I was envisioning 6 by 12 inches as being quite small.
Still small.
And in terms of donor recognition, especially if you're on the sidewalk, you'll be able to read those. But if you're driving by or sitting waiting for the light to change, you're not going to really be able to see those. So, when it comes to incentivizing people to donate, I think in my mind, you'd want to make those spaces a little bigger so their names really can stand out. And I was also in that same vein was, in terms of the 3 to 4 week period that these would be in place. Do you feel that's really enough of an incentive to get people to donate?
I think we just have some competing tensions. It's a matter of, we think it's a really fun project, and we think, we'd like to keep it on as much as possible. So that's why I think it's important, and thank you for the question on how we can continue. But we've also got the competition of trying to beautify the building itself.
Right.
And so these are our projections that will be calendared once approval is received.
I want it to succeed, but I'm always about incentives, especially on other things that we deal with here. And and my sense was that, the scale was too small and the time frame was too short. So I just wanted to see if you had any input on that in terms of your potential donor base.
So we have thought through that as well. So even though the painting of the signatures or signage will take place in that time period, and the display period, we'll call it, is relatively short, once we have approval from this commission, we would begin to market and gear up for that so that there's plenty of public awareness ahead of time to be able to carry out all of this activity in that very short amount of time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a question for staff on the, what is the maximum size that the letters can be on the temporary sign?
The Planning Commission has full discretion on really all parameters for this sign, given that the applicant is a local arts organization and a nonprofit art organization, excuse me.
Mhm. So could we word the condition such that it is at the discretion of the applicant, or do we need to set a parameter?
What I might recommend is that you consider setting outside bounds at a minimum for the outside dimensions of the overall sign, and providing perhaps a little bit of direction on or restriction on size of each individual grid as well.
Could it be predicated on the size of the donation?
Actually, the applicant that I was working with, Charles, he did mention that the grid size, this is just approximate, and it will depend on the number of donors that they get actually in the end also.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they've outlined the overall maximum size of the overall sign space. And if we don't condition it otherwise, it leaves, the flexibility to them, really.
Yeah,
Right.
I think we should leave it up to them.
Yeah. I mean, that was a question I had for staff too, is that in reviewing the resolution itself, and I hadn't noticed that condition 13 that actually talks about the time frame. But other than that, in the resolution itself, it doesn't talk about the dimensions of anything at all, and it references the development plan submitted by Charles Stanton. Is that typical for a resolution? I mean, it seems a little vague to me.
It is. Essentially, the applicant is representing their project with their application and any plans that are submitted with the application. And then a standard condition in our resolutions is to incorporate that application by reference, subject to any modifications in the conditions of approval proposed by staff or required by the Planning Commission.
When he shows on his plans a 5 by 45 sign area here on this face of the wall and 5 by 60 here, that's limiting it. And he says, red paint, then that's limiting it to that. And so you feel comfortable that is covering it all. Okay.
Yes, I would agree, Chair.
So the size of the module is really not
Not relevant.
a true restriction. That's just a general idea.
Mhm.
That is correct, yes.
Because if you look, I mean, the examples that are given in the graphics are clearly much larger than that.
Yeah.
Was there any other color consideration besides the red?
So vermilion, but yes.
Okay.
We have vermilion on some of the branding material, so that's why I'm making that reference. We would leave it up to your discretion if you would so choose. The only thing we're looking for is contrast. And so when we had that rendition put together, it was really to provide contrast and show what those signatures would look like.
I know red really does stand out. I was just
Yeah.
curious as if you were
It-
looked at blue.
We're not wedded to any particular color other than the idea of contrast.
Okay.
So I understand the community aspect of it, getting the community involved and everything, which I think is great. I understand the financial aspect of it, raising money. If you were to assess, is this mainly motivated by trying to engage the community or mainly motivated to try and raise money?
Thank you for the great question. It's really about motivating community. The museum's never undertaken $1 million public-facing campaign. And while 80% of what we do relies on generosity of our community and the public to keep Laguna Art Museum functioning. And this year is different because we have put a lot of work into identifying the needs of the facility. Simply put, we can't do this without the community.
Right. And apologize if this is a tacky question. How much does it cost to get your name on the wall?
How much do you got?
Oh,
I'm just teasing
yeah.
you. We have not I don't think we put that finance.
We haven't.
No,
Yeah, because
together yet.
I don't know, and maybe we save this for commissioner comments, but I love the community aspect of it. I hate the financial aspect of it. I personally think it's tacky. People are asked to give money and give more money to advertise themselves. And so, my general view is going to be engaging the community is fantastic. And maybe you make this at a level where everybody can, where more people can participate than fewer. Because if it becomes something that's exclusive, I think you may win the battle but lose the war.
We totally agree, which is why this campaign is called the Every Single One campaign. We really are trying to reach every single person, and we've received donations as small as a penny for this campaign.
Well, I would argue you need to pay more than a penny to get your. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Just a couple things. I'm just to clarify. You said the painting will actually occur over a 3 or 4 day period. So the idea is you're going to initiate the campaign immediately, and then over the next couple months, that'll be the funding campaign, and then it comes to a close fairly quickly, and the painting is actually accomplished. It's not a drawn out process.
Right. If I think I understand your question correctly, the sequence would go, we would start a marketing campaign and begin getting interest and lining up the individuals who would participate with us, and they would be invited to come and be part of the project over a 3 to 4 day period. And then the display period, I'm just going to call it, would take place before the painting of the building.
And is the painting itself going, I believe I heard it's going to be done by a single artist versus people going and doing their own, splashing their own paint on the wall?
We're going to allow the individuals to paint their names.
They are going to do their own.
So it very much is a community project. However, it's going to be done in tandem with and overseen by artistic and professional staff, that of our museum, our designers and our preparators and others on staff with that expertise.
And my understanding is at this point, there is no restriction in this program of how big your name can be.
Well, the squares on the grid they're not going to be any bigger than 8 by 24.
Okay, so that's what's confusing. It sounded like that the 8 by 24 was just an approximate size, and it hadn't
No.
really been, it really hadn't been identified.
That would be the maximum. So because we haven't determined exactly what the projected donor list number is, we don't know exactly how many of these squares are going to be
But
required.
it would not exceed 8 by 24 for a single contribution.
Correct.
And
correct.
and the number of squares doesn't vary by the size of the contribution.
No,
Okay.
it doesn't.
And is the April, your April timeframe, your kind of, is that set in the resolution in any place? I mean, is there anything in this approval that does set a designated timeframe for the end of this program?
So this is all part of a broader campaign, every single one. And the every single one campaign is designated as November 1st to the end of April. So we can go ahead and annotate that portion that's been established as the campaign parameters prior to any request for any of these projects.
So the answer is?
But to answer your question about the resolution, we do not have that condition in the resolution. It's essentially crafted to give the applicant flexibility. Once they've completed their donation drive, they're ready to paint the mural, and the mural is then completed, that would start the clock on their 3 weeks till expiration.
Okay, but there's really nothing now that keeps this from going on until August.
Correct.
Well, yeah, and so I thought I understood, then I thought I didn't understand, then I thought I understood again, and I'm back to I don't understand. So is the way that this works, you make your campaign and people essentially buy a square that they can put their name in. And then you're going to collect all your money for squares, and then you're going to pick a date, whether it's the course of 2-3 days, whatever, where everybody gets together and writes their name in the squares. And that's a great community event. It's great for photos. It's great for all that stuff. It gets completed over that finite period, and then the 3-week clock runs. That's what my new understanding and maybe not understanding is.
My understanding.
That's the way it works.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
So regardless of when this occurs, like to say there's a delay in the program, the fact of the matter is the total duration of the event, of the painting and the duration of the paint on the wall, it can't exceed, say, 4 weeks, regardless of when it is, because it's 3 or 4 days of painting and then 3 weeks after the painting is done. And
So just to clarify that question, so if there's delays in fundraising and it takes longer to raise the money than you had hoped, it's just a delay that the building is getting marked up, that the building is getting painted. What I originally thought coming in here was you're going to start having people put their names on as they donate. That doesn't appear to be the case.
No, there's going to be a finite parameter on that portion of
Right.
it.
So if it's delayed, the time period we're agreeing on is the time period upon which that this is going to stay on the wall.
Right.
And if there's a delay, it just pushes that time period down the road.
even though that's not your intention, we have to think of those things. So,
Yes.
okay. Understand.
Chair, if I may, so understanding that, I just want to be sure that the resolution doesn't quite reflect that. It is a bit more flexible. So if that is the will of the planning commission, i.e. we want them to only be able to paint for 3 or 4 or 5, however many days it is. And then we have a drop dead deadline for which that has to occur, such that they're not having the campaign for the next 5 years. That would be direction from the Planning Commission.
So, couple of things just for clarity. Have you established a minimum dollar amount for somebody to get their name on there?
No, we haven't established. The spirit of the campaign itself had a minimum of $106, which commemorated 106 years of the museum. But we have total flexibility as far as donations themselves, and we haven't made that.
I mean, if somebody said, hey, I'll give you $25, but I want my name on there, is that even a reasonable request? Or what? I mean, somewhere along the way, you have to make a determination. I would imagine.
You're exactly right, George. I mean, if we have to make a determination on projections on how many people would be donating, and then we would put a minimum threshold on it. But at this time, we don't have that.
Okay.
To report out tonight.
And this is kind of a question for also my fellow commissioners. Is anybody else bumped by the red? Because it bugs me for some reason. I just think it doesn't look right on the building.
It's 3 to 4 weeks. I mean,
That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
Okay.
Let them do.
Don't fall
what
on your
they
sword
want.
over.
And it's not red. It's vermilion.
It's vermilion.
and I believe the way it's written is, it says it, I think they even have flexibility in the colors, the way that
Okay.
Charles
We'll
Sutton.
get you a rest
letter
me red.
cars.
Just asking the question.
Well,
To answer your question, I like the vermilion.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. Everybody has an opinion.
well, and here's a question for the applicant team is that you were talking about the possibility of having 8-inch by 24-inch grids. The 5-foot height is not divisible by 8 inches. Would you like the option of going to 5 foot 4 inches maximum, which would be divisible by 8?
I think we would. I will stipulate that the intention is that we don't want any ladders, step-ups, scaffolding, anything like that. So we will make sure that we work within parameters that it's just standing accessibility.
Does 5 foot high versus 5 foot 4 make a difference to any commissioners?
Let
Okay,
the tall people go up.
I would suggest that maybe we allow that option.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Did they?
I don't think so. You guys didn't have your own specific presentation, did you? Okay. Any other questions? Nope. I will open it to any members of the public who wish to speak on this item. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll go to Commissioner. Anybody in particular want to start?
I guess
All
I'll
right, Commissioner
start.
Goldman?
So when I was a kid growing up, wallpaper was the fad. And whenever we wallpapered a room, my brothers and I, we got to bring our friends over and we got to scribble whatever we wanted on the walls. And it was a nice thing. It was a community event. And that's what I see this as. And I hope the way you wind up doing this, it's a way that it's inclusive for the whole community. So if somebody buys 20 squares, they're standing right next to the person who could only afford to buy 1 square, and everybody feels included. Because I understand clearly the financial needs and trying to drive it, but to be able to do that in a way that engages the community and gets people excited about the museum and everything would be fantastic. And I like, by the way, now that I understand it, that nothing happens until you're all ready to go, and then you go, and there's a brief period of time where people driving through Laguna can look up and say, what the hell is that? And then it ends, and you paint the building. I think it's really cool.
Commissioner Kellenberg?
Yeah, well, being associated with a nonprofit art organization myself, fundraising is a infinite challenge, and I think it's a brilliant idea and very creative. And I wish you the best of luck. And I hope you raise $1 jillion.
He's good for 20 squares.
Yeah, we're all there.
Yeah. So I'm obviously supportive. I do think, though, I would suggest in the resolution there is some definition of the process we just described. I don't really care when it happens, but I think once it happens, that it does stay. There's a 4-day period, of community activity and painting, and that the 3-week duration is clarified in the resolution. And on that basis, I would be supportive.
Great. Commissioner Dubin?
Yeah, I mean, there's still parts of it that are a little vague to me, but you know, that's besides the point. I think the intent is there, and obviously, you know, fundraising for a institution like our museum is an ongoing battle and struggle, and I know that it's something that coming up with creative solutions to fundraising is always going to be at the forefront of any art institution. So, you know, I'm all in favor of it. You know, I think some of the process seems a little hard for me to understand, but I'm not too worried about it because it is a temporary endeavor. So it's not something that is going to go on forever. I'm a little interested to see how in a 3 to 4 day period, if you have 100 donors, let's say, or 500 donors, like to try to get them all down there to paint their name on the wall is going to be a little bit of a challenge, I think. But I don't know if you have a plan for, you know, the overseeing artist that may be able to look at somebody's signature on a piece of paper, and if they can't make it down there in that 3 to 4 day period, that the artist can replicate the signature for them. Obviously, that's probably going to be necessary for some people to be able to participate. But I mean, I'm absolutely supportive because I know the struggles of trying to continue to support a nonprofit art institution is always challenging. So good luck with it.
Commissioner Whiten.
Yeah, well, I'm a little biased about this project, but I'm all in on the project. I think that the museum is in a moment of renaissance right now and is achieving a much higher profile than it has, say, 5 years ago. And there is an emphasis to make the museum more meaningful to the community and to actually, as a director, Pearl Lee said, make this a community event and make the museum a community place. So we've had at the museum the Art and Nature program, and this is maybe the beginning of an art and community program where you know, we get high visibility, and we'll get some press on this, which will do all the tacky things like bring money into the museum, which it really needs. So I think it's the most exciting part is the visibility that it's going to bring to the museum. The other thing I would say is that I like the fact that it's not overly defined. I think it should be, the museum should feel unfettered. I don't think we should try to restrict it, you know, confine it. It should be a creative piece. It's an art piece. And I think we can define it in terms of the schedule, but beyond that and the overall boundaries. But other than that, I don't want to define it in any way. If I had my druthers, I wouldn't define it by the grid at all. But what I'm saying is, I don't think we should regulate that.
You know, if I may, and to George's comment, let the people pick their color.
Yeah, whatever they decide to do. I don't, you know, I think it's an art piece, you know, and we shouldn't be like too much control over it. So a certain amount of vagueness, I think, is good. Which, as I understand it, is the way the resolution is worded. So I'm all in. I think it's fantastic, and congratulations.
You don't want to control creativity, Susan.
Sure.
And so, Mr. Chair, just for
Yes.
the record, I believe you used it in the colloquial sense, bias, in terms of competing community values and goals, not, of course, in the formal sense. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Be careful. Okay. I'm supportive as well. Reading through the staff report, it was kind of interesting where it was citing the section in the code that gave the planning commission the amount of authority that we have. I've never seen kind of language like that. It's a little strange the way it was written. There must have been a reason going back whenever that was written for it being written the way it was, but it gave us, you know, authority that it was above and beyond what we typically have, but we're not exercising it here. You know, I agree that we should give you as much flexibility as possible. I have And also, I'm just, in general, I'm so happy that the Laguna Art Museum is still here. I remember a number of years ago, there was, I don't know if you want to call it a hostile takeover attempt or whatever it was, that it looked like for a while there that it may go away and it'll go up to Newport or something. But so I'm glad that they are still here with us, and we want to be as supportive as possible. My suggestion would be, in terms of modifying the resolution, would be to perhaps reword that condition 13 to give the applicant, let's say, a week to complete the painting of the signage, and then 3 to 4 weeks of it remaining up on the building after the completion of that.
It should be a definitive, not 3 to 4, but say 4.
Okay, up to 4 weeks after the completion of the painting. And that if the applicant decides to go with an 8-inch by 24-inch grid pattern, that they be allowed to expand the height of the sign from 5 foot to 5'4".
Well, if I could add to that, I like the idea of letting donors choose their own color. And instead of it looking like very linear, like if it goes a little bit beyond that or below it or whatever, so that it's kind of more random and fun looking, I think that would be aesthetically more pleasing instead of containing it in a square box.
So George, apparently you have problems coloring within the lines.
I always have. Doesn't work for me.
So it is the idea that rather than it being a certain dimension of height and length, it might be a certain square footage.
Yeah, I just think, like, even if somebody, went this way with their signature and somebody went this way.
Well, we're not, the grid pattern's not part of the resolution at all. So all we're doing is the maximum size of the sign, overall sign space. So then they can.
I'm just saying, if it slips, a little bit beyond the linear edge, I don't think
They
we should
have the
freak out
ability to
over
do
it.
that.
Okay.
And Chair, is there an appetite from the commission to set a drop dead deadline for completion?
No, because we want to give them as.
I don't
much time
think
as
so. I mean, it really seems like it's just a sliding. If anything, it just slides
I mean,
the
they have
beginning to a different.
Yeah.
They have their own schedule constraints that they're driven to, but I think we should give them flexibility.
Understood.
As long as they stay within that total 5-week timeframe.
So everybody's,
Once the fundraising is completed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys are clear with that?
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion with the amendments to the resolution as noted?
I will make an attempt at a motion to adopt resolution approving sign permit 242680 and finding said action exempt from CEQA and inclusive of the modified conditions that we have discussed and want to move forward with.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg,
Yes.
Chair Sadler.
Yes. You are approved. Congratulations.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for all your help.
So 14-day right of appeal to the city council if anybody doesn't agree with that decision. Okay. We'll give everybody a moment to change over here, and then we will be moving on to item 5.4, which is a temporary use permit and a coastal development permit at 652 Laguna Canyon Road, the Pacific Marine Mammal Center. And Sarah Olson will be presenting this item for us tonight. Is there any disclosures?
Yeah, I met on site with the applicant and the applicant's architect. Also, my wife is vice chair of the board of the Laguna Food Pantry, and I've discussed the letter that the food pantry sent to us with her.
Thank you. Any other disclosures?
Yes, I am affiliated as a volunteer unpaid volunteer at the food pantry, but it does not require me to recuse myself.
Commissioner Dubin?
Have no disclosures.
Yeah, and I've spoken with Ann Bellier, the director of the food pantry, in the past regarding some of her concerns regarding the Pacific Marine Mammal Center. All right, thank you. Sarah?
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Item 5.4 is a request for approval of a temporary use permit and a coastal development permit for the Pacific Marine Mammal Center to continue the operation of a previously approved temporary animal care facility. The project is located at 20652 Laguna Canyon Road in the institutional zone at an approximately 15,700 square foot area on the north end of the Laguna Beach Dog Park and directly abutting the Laguna Food Pantry. The proposed project was previously approved at a notice City Council hearing on July 11th, 2023. The entitlements have since expired on September 1st, 2024. The proposed temporary use before you tonight is only to continue the existing use and includes no expansion or additional improvements to the use or the site. The proposed dates of the temporary use permit are from January 2025 to December 31st, 2025, or until project completion at the main facility, whichever is sooner. The hours of operation will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with occasional staff presence outside of these hours in the event of a late night rescue or emergency. The anticipated number of animals to be cared for will be about 40 to 75, and the anticipated staff members at one time will be about 10. No parking is proposed at the temporary use site, and staff will continue to utilize the existing parking areas at the main facility. All existing improvements at the site are proposed to remain, and these include 5 small pool pens and 2 large pool pens with a shade structure over the pool areas, an ICU hospital structure with an office trailer, and a restroom for staff. The site is also equipped with a NOAA required perimeter fencing, which includes 2 rows of chain link fencing, and the outermost fencing includes a decorative sound attenuating cover to reduce sight lines from the dog park and to reduce noise impacts to and from the facility. The project requires the approval of a coastal development permit due to the property's location in the coastal appealable area of the coastal zone. The Laguna Creek and its associated 25-foot buffer is identified as a major watershed and drainage course. However, the project site sits just outside the 25-foot buffer of the watercourse and does not disturb the undeveloped hillside to the east. Overall, staff finds that the proposed use is consistent with the findings necessary for the granting of the temporary use permit and coastal development permit, and staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution and finding said action exempt from CEQA. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be available for questions.
Thank you. I had a question, and I'm not sure if it's for you, Sarah, or perhaps Anthony. We heard this previously before the city council officially approved the temporary use permit. I believe that at that time, we had questioned the length of time of the temporary use permit and whether or not this work could reasonably be completed in that time. Do you remember why additional time wasn't initially asked for and why it was only for 1 year?
That's a great question, Chair. The applicant may be able to elaborate on this response. I think from the city's point of view, we certainly wanted to encourage the applicant to move forward through the construction process as quickly as possible. We're allowing this temporary facility on a public use site, specifically the city's dog park, and there are neighbors, i.e. the food pantry. But we understand that once you start the construction process, you run into unexpected delays. I think at this point, the applicant's very confident that with this extension, they will have sufficient time to complete their construction without having to return to the Planning Commission once more to seek a further extension. And in fact, this application probably includes a little bit of a buffer just in case they extend beyond their projected construction completion date, to which the applicant can elaborate on.
Okay, so basically, that answers the question of like, should we consider making this longer than a year? But you're saying for the reasons stated, I mean, the fact that it's on city property and all that, there's a reason not to allow them extra time if it's not necessary, correct?
That would be staff's recommendation.
And then, that the previous temporary use permit expired last September. So basically, it's been operating for 4 months without a valid use permit. Is that normal or is that a problem? I mean, is that, I guess one is that a problem? Two is, why did that happen? It would seem to me that the applicant team probably knew at some point before, significantly before it expired, that they weren't going to meet that date. Why didn't it happen in such a way that there wasn't this period where, we have this 4-month period where they're I don't know if we're saying operating illegally, but operating without a valid use permit?
I probably couldn't answer on behalf of the applicant, but I will say from the city's perspective, the application before you this evening would cure the situation. And this is a new application subject to your discretionary approval.
Okay, and it would begin from the new approval date, not from the previous expiration date?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
I do have, and this is sort of 3 questions rolled into one because they all kind of speak to the same thing. I know that some folks from the food pantry have brought up the issue of some odors and things that kind of disturb their operation, as well as, well, my question is, besides that, and whether or not that's been mitigated or not, and also if there's any issues with the food pantry and food possibly getting any kind of contamination from the temporary shelter. And also on page 8 of the staff report, number 3, are we sure none of my 2 previous questions or concerns impact this finding?
Might need a little bit of guidance on which finding you're referring to.
Okay.
It's finding number 3, correct?
Number 3 of
It
page.
will have no detrimental effects upon the surrounding properties and community
Right.
and will not violate any ordinance. I mean, and once again, planning manager, feel free to interrupt me. Yeah, I mean, this is staff's recommendation. If the planning commission, of course, feels differently, that those issues that you just brought up may or may not impact that finding, that is your guys' discretion.
Okay. Just wanted to throw it out there because it's, I think there has been some issues. I don't know if they've been addressed fully or if there's any other further concerns from staff from the food pantry in terms of their operation. And so I just wanted to ask those questions to see if, and maybe that's something the applicant can address.
Yeah, maybe after the applicant does their presentation, we'll ask applicant questions separately.
My question has to do with temporary use permit. There's a large slab of concrete involved with this operation. Is that typical for, it obviously must be permitted for a temporary use permit that concrete slabs are installed? And then the second part of the question is, will all of that concrete be required by the city to be removed at the end of this extension? And is there a finite time by which the concrete must be removed?
So this particular use, it's rather unique. It's specialized. It's marine mammal care. The applicant is probably better equipped to explain the reasons why a concrete pad was necessary for the project, but there is a condition of approval in your resolution, which was carried over from the prior TUP, which states that upon completion of construction of the main facility that's currently underway, this permit would expire and the site will be restored to its previous condition. The Planning Commission could expand on that condition to set up a definitive period of time by which that restoration work would need to be completed. And the applicant may have some feedback for the Planning Commission to consider as to what they believe may be a reasonable timeframe to complete that work.
You know, I understand the need for the slab for their operation. They clearly need it, but the question has to do with the city and temporary use permits. That's all legit. To pour slabs, erect structures, as long as the understanding is they are temporary.
Yes, this applicant did make the commitment to restore the site to its pre-existing condition.
Okay. Related to this, it's not this specific project, but it's a question about where the city is at this point in studying that entire area for the site plan of that area, as it including the food pantry, the alternative sleeping location, the city access, the utility access. There are 5 different uses there. Is the city have a study on their strategic plan list?
It's a great question. I do not happen to know.
Okay, we could ask council. Okay, thank you.
My questions are were along the lines of yours, Susan. I actually think we're in a very difficult position here, this commission. We're being asked to extend a temporary use that we really have no choice other than to extend it because caissons are put in, concrete has been poured. What are we going to do? Tell them to rip it out?
Evict the seals and
Yeah.
hit the road.
Fortunately, there's only 3 of them right now. But how do we find ourselves in a position? Because we heard this previously, and this temporary facility, and correct me if I'm wrong, was not involved in what we had approved. And then it went to city council. It didn't come back to us, and proof caissons were put in, concrete was poured, and they didn't get it done in time. That required it to come back to us. And we really have no option other than to say yes. And then the second part of my question, and it's consistent with Susan's question, is what's going to happen when this is done? And we talked about this on site today. Ripping out that concrete, pulling out those caissons, it's going to be environmentally challenging. It's got a whole bunch of issues. So shouldn't we, as part of this TUP, or at some point before this expires, have some kind of a meeting to talk about what's going to happen with this pad when this is all done? Because again, if we just come back to another planning commission meeting and it's put on the agenda, approve keeping the pad, because the pad is already there, we're going to be put into another position of, well, what are we really doing here, other than just hitting something with a rubber stamp?
I think some of these questions and decisions probably occur at a city council level to some extent as the property owner. What is the city's, to Susan's question, long-term vision for the site? Is there any benefit to retaining the pad unrelated to the current use, given that it's there? Now those decisions are outside the context of the application before you this evening. The city council did approve the prior TUP application, and at that time, considered whether it wanted to utilize a portion of city-owned property for this temporary use. I think with this applicant's unique duty of care to its ongoing patients, the city was looking to provide some type of an accommodation for this temporary use. I know that before the prior TUP was approved, a number of sites were being considered, and ultimately a decision was made to place the temporary facility at this location based on the analysis that occurred at that time.
Yeah, it would seem to me that, the way it's written right now is that they're obligated to restore the site to its previous.
It is written that way.
To its previous condition. You know, how that's done, you know, that's means and methods of construction that are beyond our, you know, our
And to Susan's point, I think before you start ripping out concrete and pulling out caissons, there should be some kind of a general plan of what it's going to be, because we talked about this today. It's possible that, you know, some of those pads can be can be further developed.
Well-
I think as a general comment, it's a shame. I don't know how this bypassed us, because I think this is, you know, this is what we do. We would have asked a lot of these questions up front, and it might have resulted in a better temporary facility that could have been planned to be moved into a more permanent facility. It seems to me we have a little bit of a mess right now.
I could suggest art studios for that use.
Well, again, you know, the way it's written is that they're to restore it to its previous condition. And if the city council decides otherwise, that's, you know, their prerogative. But I don't think that we're able to.
No, but I think
that.
we would have asked a lot of the questions about, let's look at a plan. Let's plan for the whole site. Like for example, where the Christmas stuff was stored, which is cleared out. Now, there was a very clear space which just screamed, this is where the temporary facility should have been. And it's too bad it wasn't there, because you could have moved that right into the permanent facility much more easily than you can this current temporary facility. Again, I guess, you know, what I'm saying is kind of, we are where we are, so I'm not really doing any good. But it just seemed to me when I got this report, and that's why I went out there to look at it, because I was like, wait a minute, why didn't we look at this before? And all the questions that I wanted to ask, they're kind of irrelevant, because there's literally concrete. It's in stone. So.
Right. And this TUP, I mean, typically when we grant TUPs, that we're the final word on it. The reason that this went to the city council was because this was city property. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, Chair.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. To the applicant team, you have as much time as you want to tell us whatever you want, and then we may ask you some questions.
Thank you very much. I'm Glenn Gray. I'm the CEO of Pacific Marine Mammal Center. Well, I think the request was pretty straightforward. I can't rewrite history, because when I was asked to present to the city council, I was told that was the process. So sorry for bypassing you. We were told to present to city council. Yes, the condition is to return it to what it was before. We'll live by that. I think there's a lot of important conversation and discussion and debate to have about that, but that's not tonight. But I would ask you to consider some alternatives for it. Where we are today, sadly, we thought we'd be in our new permanent situation, our new permanent facility. There's a number of things that happen when you try to build a complex facility between a hillside and a creek. And we ran into a lot of those. There's about a half a dozen that I could list, but several have caused the delay. 3 in particular: Southern California Edison, the city to a certain degree, because we're building a building that we're sharing with the city. And that got into some interesting debates about, well, who's going to take what part of it and how's it going to be designed? And we kept giving people time to make decisions. And so that's why we are today hoping to move back in by June. We had it clearly planned out. Lawrence here represents our general contractor. We should have been in by now if it was, but there were forces beyond that we couldn't control. And you're right, Stephen, there, you know, with better planning, I would have loved to have it closer to us, but that wasn't an option at the time that was provided to us. So where we are is, yes, we have it. We're not going to tear it out right now. We have to continue it. We're moving as fast as we possibly can to get back into our permanent facility. We want to be there. There was one condition, one modification I'd like you to consider, because the way it's written now, I don't think it's as practical as possible. It says that this is valid until the end of December or until the completion of the construction. Well, the day that we're completed, we're going to move a hospital. We cannot move a hospital overnight from the temporary to the permanent. So I'd like you to consider 90 days for the permit to continue so that we can make that transition. Because the practical side of it is we may get a conditional approval to occupy, but we may not get a final to occupy. So we'd like some room because, like I said, we're moving patients and a hospital. That would be my only modification.
Great. Thank you. Any questions of the applicants?
So for clarity, you're suggesting that it be, instead of the end of the year, that it be extended to the end of March of 2026?
Not exactly, no. I'm fine with the end of the year.
Okay.
No,
I'm
just-
not clear on what you're asking.
The way it's written is
Yeah,
that
he's saying
until the end of the year or until completion of the project. So let's say we complete the project.
Oh, I see.
June.
Okay, so it's the definition of completion that you'd like some clarity.
Yeah, so 90 days beyond the completion, still within,
I see.
The building's
The year.
completed, they get their certificate of occupancy, it's still going to take some time to actually do the transition to the new facility.
Is December 30, given that, and given your assumption that completion is going to occur greater than 3 months before the end of the year, is that enough time? I mean,
well,
while we're here.
I will ask Lawrence to
time you
chime
need.
in on this because we are still at the mercy of Southern California Edison, which has been the biggest obstacle to getting this complete. So,
And we
The
also
entire
have-
city is.
Well, and we also have an unknown world, given what's happened north of us, you know, what that impacts it's going to have on construction, on everything, utilities, everything. So, I mean, my question is it enough time so you don't have to come back here again or lapse it and?
well, I guess I was being optimistic, yes.
Well, Lawrence Hoff, Empire Construction Project Manager. I definitely feel it's enough time. Our original plan was to be done at the end of July in 23 and or 24, and now here we are in 25. We've, of all the difficulties and the things that we've come into that are issues, all the difficult ones are resolved with the exception of Southern California Edison, which 1 week into the project withdrew their approved plans. And we had to redesign. Now we're in front of the food pantry. And I don't think they even realized that their box was in the Caltrans. They needed their Caltrans approval. They assured me they would have that 3 months ago. So, but all of PMMC's underground conduits are installed, ready for install. So it's just a timing issue with Caltrans. Apart from that, I'm very comfortable with the timeline.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm just, the issue of the odors impacts, can you talk about that a little bit? And is there any way of mitigating that as part of this continuance?
Be done before summer. That was the culprit this last year when in, I believe, July, August, it became very warm. Yes, there was odors and the folks at the food pantry made us aware of it. We did what we could to mitigate it by putting in fans to blow the odor towards the hillside. I think that helped, but it wasn't perfect.
Is the odor the fish that's fed to the seals?
It's really it's the seals.
It's the seals?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There actually was, at the time, it was the most prevalent. It was when the city had changed trash haulers and the Marine Mammal Center was disposing of their unused fish in the trash cans out front. And so they got stuck there for a week on a hot day. So they no longer dispose of any of the fish materials in those trash cans. They take them up to their facility. So up to the permanent facility. So they eliminated that. They've got regular pickups. And then, they had 100 patients up there.
So theoretically, the issue is resolved, is what you're saying?
We believe it is.
Except for the seal body odor.
That's a tough one to predict because at that time, we also had an unusual population count of elephant seals. They're very large and messy.
This is a question about breaking down the site after you've moved into the permanent facility. I mean, we're kind of in a conundrum because the best possible way forward would be for the city to have a master plan that would consider the pad that's there and try to utilize it in a way that, gives it some life. But things move, kind of slowly on this front. And if you're off-site by the end of next year, let's say, how long would it take you? I'm trying to put that into a bigger time frame. How long, what is the breakdown period?
Let me give you an overview, and then Lawrence, if you could give me those specifics. Part of the facility is trailers. They're gone fast. The structure itself was, because the condition was temporary, it was built to be taken down quickly, meaning the walls are just fences and the ceiling can go. I'm not an expert at removing a large concrete pad, so Lawrence, can you enlighten?
It happens all the time.
Well, yeah, we went with the a lightweight roof structure because NOAA required shading, which turned into at the last minute heavy timber because of our fire issues at the canyon. So it's built safe. It's not going to fall over, but the structural engineer wanted to use a mat slab to support all that, which we deemed to be almost impossible to get out and really expensive to haul away. So we had the option of doing 13 smaller caissons, 13 foot, which we know we can get out of the grounds. And the reason we ended up with the concrete slab was because we met with Tim Wheeland and NOAA, and we have to have a self-contained facility. And if we'd used wood or tile or asphalt, it would not have been self-contained. So we were kind of forced into it at the last minute. And then lo and behold, it ended up being like a really nice facility. But, we actually went over budget, but we followed all the rules, and they have something that works.
To take it out would be how long?
Oh, we could get it out in 6 weeks.
Including the pad if you have
Including
to.
the pad, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to add on his comment about, we've referenced NOAA, that's who we're licensed by. We have to follow their regulations. And a lot of what we had to do was because of their conditions and to eliminate any possibility of cross-contamination between our facility, the dog park, or the food pantry. So it was built to protect our neighbors. That's why it looks like a bunker.
Can I ask you a quick question? Is there any airborne contamination that comes from the facility that could maybe float over into the food pantry?
There is not.
Okay.
That's why the fences and the padding along the fences are there. If we sensed that there was, we would not keep a patient there.
I see. Thank you.
And my suggestion would be, when you get to the point of completion and, you're moving into the permanent facility, and the way it's written is that you restore the site to its previous condition, that you reach out to the city staff and city council and let them know. It's like, here's where we're at, we will meet the conditions of approval and remove all this. Shall you, see that's the best option? However, we've got this nice foundation, nice building here. Would you consider any other potential use for it? And then see what happens. Maybe, even though they don't have a master plan for the area, that they would, consider some other option, but that's beyond what we could do here. So, okay, I will move to, are you finished? Anything else you want to add?
I am, unless you have other questions.
Okay. Okay. I'll open to members of the public. Anybody who wishes to speak on this item, please come forward. And if you could give us your name and print your name on the list over there for the record after you're done.
Thank you. My name is Ann Bellier. I'm the Executive Director of Laguna Food Pantry. And we are here tonight to support the continuation of the TUP for the Pacific Marine Mammal Center. We realize that construction of their permanent facility is not yet complete and they need this. But at the same time, I'm very happy to hear you all discuss a master plan for this area. You know, there are 6 users to this area, and I don't think it's been thought through. And we really would appreciate that consideration of our needs and requirements are part of that. As you develop that master plan, we also ask you to consider whether or not a temporary facility for marine mammals is really best situated adjacent to a food distribution facility. Laguna Food Pantry serves a large number of our population, our community here, providing fresh, free groceries to our neighbors in need, our Laguna Beach seniors, workers, students, and families. And with that, we appreciate your consideration of our needs as well. So, thank you.
I had a question for you, Ann. So, definitely you've had some impacts from this temporary facility, which is immediately adjacent to you. With the permanent facility, previous to this, I mean, were you having any impacts from at that point?
We could hear the barking, but it was kind of barking on both sides, the seals on one side and the dogs on the other.
But you were not getting any odor impacts at all from?
Rarely,
Okay.
rarely, not like what we have now.
Okay.
Our families drive through and we'll oftentimes say, "Thank you, I don't want seafood today."
Okay.
Thinking that the odor they're smelling in their vehicles is
Okay.
from us.
It sounds from what I'm hearing is that, there's limited ability to deal with the odors from the marine mammals themselves. What are we going to do? Coat them with some sort of antiperspirant? No, I don't think so. But,
We get that.
it sounds like they have identified maybe some other problem issues regarding this fish and other things like that they're trying to address. So hopefully, that this will help mitigate it. But yeah, okay. Well, thanks for your input.
Absolutely.
Any other members of the public? Anything else you'd like to add?
Only if that you might consider that modification that I mentioned.
Okay. Okay, I'll close the public hearing and go to Commissioner action.
I guess I'll start again.
Commissioner Goldman.
With regard to extension of this TUP, I'm supportive of it because, as I said, I really don't think we have a choice. You need to finish, and you need a temporary facility, and it's already in existence. With regard to your request for the amendment, I'm supportive of that, and also want you to make sure that it gives you enough time. So unforeseen things happen, particularly given the fires and everything, and I don't know if that impacts Southern California Edison and Caltrans, et cetera. I would be supportive of that. And, Glenn, you used the words, the conversation for what to do with the pad is for another time. I agree with that, but I would say that other time should be sooner rather than later. And there should be some thinking about what's going to happen with that pad, because it really would be a shame if it were ripped up and then a plan was presented and people scratched their head and said, "Oh my gosh, we could have used the pad." So, I would just advocate, knowing you've got a lot on your plate, that somebody should take the initiative. And I don't know whether it's us, a body of us, the city, somebody should take the initiative to start thinking about what's going to happen with that pad and what the general plan is for the whole site.
We would welcome that now.
Yeah, I think everybody would.
Commissioner Kellenberg.
Yeah, you can't help be supportive. It's unfortunate that it's a bit of a nuisance to the food pantry, but I'm not sure how it sounds like you've done what you can, given the situation. I'm guessing that if a little bit more time had been put on the original application, we wouldn't be sitting here. Most construction projects go over schedule. I am a little interested in George's point about the finding that there's no negative impact on adjacent. I think it's hard to make that finding. And I would ask council's suggestion on how we address that.
So it obviously is one of the required findings. The finding does say something, the proposed temporary use, comma, as conditioned. So I understand, Commissioner Goldman, your kind of feeling about the scenario for which that is before you. It is my job as the counsel to the Planning Commission, in my role right now, is to say you guys retain that discretion. So if this is a finding you cannot make, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you must make it. I will say if that's a concern of the majority, you can potentially impose some conditions to try to vitiate those concerns.
Exactly. That's what I was kind of hoping you would say. And so I would hope that because the finding is difficult to make, that we request that the applicant continue to actively find ways of mitigating the impact on the adjacent property.
I think that's reasonable. Okay, Commissioner Whiten.
Yeah, I agree with both Commissioner comments. Additionally, can we add wording in a condition to have the Marine Mammal Center contact the city regarding the future
Potential use of.
potential use? Can we condition the project to do that so that there's some force behind it?
Sure. So I mean, I guess the what I'm hearing you say is that there's at least a check-in so that there isn't this, hey, they're just we've moved in and now the first thing we do is take the jackhammer, I'm sure you wouldn't, to the concrete pad.
Right.
I think that would be appropriate. Now, once again, that check-in, I can't speak authoritatively on the future, but may just be, hey, we're still thinking about what we're going to do with it. And so I would say it'd be fine that prior to the removal of the pad, contact with the community development department 3 weeks prior is sufficient, but that is maybe just a potentially minor prophylactic if the ultimate goal is to keep it. But yeah, that'd be fine.
I think the applicant was going to say something.
May I add? I'd be happy to for you to make that a condition. We would love to have a conversation sooner versus later.
Yeah, I think it facilitates the need for the master plan, frankly, apart from your project and your required conditions on a broader scale for the community. It puts some force into a master plan for that area.
Agree.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Duke, you finished?
Yeah, well, I was going to circle back on that, planning is in our namesake here, so, I think as a commission, depending on what council decides in terms of the aftermath of the temporary site, that before that gets completely removed, I mean, there's all kinds of uses that can potentially move into that in a more permanent basis. And certainly, I know everybody probably could come up with at least 2 or 3 things that would be an appropriate use for that to, repurpose that area. So certainly, making that a condition of approval of the TUP I think is a good idea to before the jackhammers take it all out. So beyond that, my only other comment is that I think we're all looking forward to the opening of the new permanent facility. I think the fact that the water savings, everything about that is one of the very special things that is part of our culture here in Laguna Beach, that it's something that is unique to our city to have this center operational and open for people to come visit from time to time. I think it's a really important piece of our unique puzzle that makes Laguna Beach so special. So we're, the sooner it happens, the better we'll all feel, and I'm sure the food pantry folks will feel the same way. And I do hope that we can find a really interesting use for that slab, so that it would also save you money to have to not chisel it out of the ground. So that's my comment.
Well, I agree with my fellow commissioners. As Commissioner Goldman stated, we don't really have an option here. We can't, I mean, just to deny the extension of the temporary use permit or the new temporary use permit just isn't an option. So regarding, yes, in terms of proposed changes to conditions of approval, I would, suggest that that the applicant team reach out to the cities sooner rather than later regarding potential future uses for the facilities that are there rather than ripping them out. I would suggest that we further define completion of the project being completion being at the completion of the actual move into the new facilities, not the completion of construction of the new facilities. Regarding the master plan for the whole area, it's that's a great idea. I know our former commissioner, Roger McErlane, was bringing this up as an issue many years ago. He was volunteering there at the Laguna Food Pantry and had noted back then how, messed up the circulation and access was for that property with the multiple uses going on there. So that would be, I don't know if we could make that a condition, but a suggestion that that the city council look further into the master plan and consider using the planning commission for those purposes. I guess that's a question for staff.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, I think that staff can, diligently report that that was the, feelings of the planning commission. I would say that it's as the subsidiary body, it's very difficult to condition the city council at this level. So I would advise.
could try.
Yes, right. But that being said, with you guys are free to give direction to staff to say if this is ever before the city council. This was kind of the will of the planning commission.
Okay. So, but the other conditions of having the applicant team reach out to the city regarding the potential future uses for the facilities rather than removing them, and that that the completion be further defined the way.
Correct.
I
And then just one clarification. I did want to be sure I want to make sure that the reaching out to the city, we do add that the director of community development may then extend or waive the requirement such that if there's a plan that, hey, we want that, we're not left with that. Does that make sense? We're not left with that condition that still stays. You must remove it. We've reached out to you. City says, great, we want to keep it. And then we go, uh-oh, we have no mechanism. So that's reflected in the condition that our esteemed planning manager came up with.
And I agree with, the condition 22 as proposed there, that, we had previously approved a temporary use permit and made those findings previously, but we didn't, when we made those findings, it was on the assumption that it would not have the negative impacts to the neighbors. And then later we find out there has been some negative impacts, and here we are trying to approve a temporary use permit again. And we're like, well, now we know that there's been. So I think by adding this condition, we're working that in there as best we can. So if somebody would like to make
Before we make a motion,
Sure.
Anthony, a question. What's the dog park position on all this? Just unheard, they're okay? I'm surprised that we didn't get any correspondence from them.
It's the city, really. I mean, but there's users of the dog park. but-
Well,
Is there?
Organization.
Yeah. Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'll go to the city. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, the part of the slab is on the dog park, where the dog park was.
It is, yes, that is correct, Commissioner. And there is a group of constituents that represented the interests of the dog park users. I wasn't involved with those conversations, but I know the city worked closely with that group to.
Nobody from the dog park organization has spoken for or against this.
Not that I am personally aware of.
Okay. Sorry.
Nope, no problem. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I can take a shot. I move that we adopt the resolution approving temporary use permit 242518 and coastal development permit 242517 and finding said action exempt from CEQA with the additional conditions that in order to mitigate issues with finding number 3, that the applicant actively pursue the control of odors moving off-site to the extent practical and possible, and that at the time of demolition, that there be correspondence with the city and discussions on how best to move forward while minimizing impact to the adjacent properties.
Maybe mention these specifically as outlined in 17.
Revisions. Yeah.
And additional revised conditions, as noted in the staff report, condition 17, condition 22, and condition 23. I'm not going to read all that.
21.
And condition
21.
21.
21.
And 21.
Is there a second?
A second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg,
Yes.
Chair Sadler.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
We will take a 5-minute break until 8 o'clock, where we will reconvene.
Yeah, it is. I know. Yeah, but just sitting in coffee, in Bear Coffee the other day, looking around, there were people with sweatshirts on that said like Hollywood. So I went up, I talked to them, it was a young couple. And there were two other young couples. All three of those couples were from LA. And it's the air quality. They all have. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we'll get some young people to move here. Easily.
Okay, I will call the Planning Commission meeting back to order. And we are on to item 5.5, which is a temporary use permit and coastal development permit. And in the public right-of-way adjacent to 202 Park Avenue. And Louis Lacasella, our senior administrative and analyst, will be presenting this item for us here tonight. Louis, take it away.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Louis Lacasella, Senior Analyst. As mentioned, item 5.5 this evening is consideration of request for a TUP and CDP to construct an outdoor dining parklet. The city's outdoor dining and parklet program runs through January 1st, 2026. The proposed project would be located on public right-of-way adjacent to 202 Park Avenue. The proposed park deck is to be placed on two existing parking spaces in front of the restaurant, and the proposed parklet would be constructed to match the existing parklets in the city. No new design is being proposed tonight, so it would match the existing parklets that are through the city and the community. The project is in compliance with the required TUP findings, and the temporary use is also consistent with the city's general plan. The project is also in compliance with CDP requirements and will have no impact on coastal resources, visitor serving facilities, or coastal access, and the parklet will not interfere with the sidewalk. The project is also exempt from CEQA, and the sections are mentioned on the before slide. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the proposed resolution approving temporary use permit 242425 and coastal development permit 242427, and then finding said action is category exempt from CEQA based on the CEQA guidelines that are on the screen before you. And then staff and applicant are available for any questions the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Any questions for staff at this time?
Yeah, I
Commissioner Whiten?
do. Louis, on the coastal develop, I've had this question before, but I never have asked it. In the staff report, page 5, under the coastal development permit, finding 1, that the project is in conformity with the design review. The review criteria, the first criteria, the proposed development will not encroach on any existing physical access way legally used by the public or any proposed public access way identified in the adopted local coastal plan. Isn't a road a public access way?
I can address that question, Commissioner. Within the context of the LCP, what it's really referring to is public beach access. And there is a map in our LCP that identifies those public access ways. And so this project doesn't affect those areas.
So are the sidewalks that are adjacent to the proposed parklet public access ways?
Not within the context of this particular finding.
Okay, and where are the public access ways?
They're essentially oceanward of Coast Highway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of staff?
Just kind of a similar question from the last one on finding number 3. It's, the finding is that there's no detrimental effects upon surrounding properties. And we're losing parking spaces with this, right?
Correct. There would be
Right.
2 parking spaces being
So-
displaced.
So I'm curious how the staff finds that losing 2 parking spaces isn't detrimental to adjacent properties.
Well, it's ultimately up to the Planning Commission's discretion. I will say that based on prior planning commission decisions, you have found that on a case-by-case basis that the loss of two public parking spaces would not have detrimental effects upon surrounding properties. I will mention that in the downtown specific plan area in particular, a lot of the public parking that's being supplied in this area is pooled as common parking that can be utilized by a large number of users, whether their destination is the beach or other nearby businesses. The city does maintain and operate several public parking lots and also one parking structure. Those lots and structures are not being affected by this project and will continue to provide parking in this area.
So perhaps the answer is that although it might be detrimental, it's not detrimental of a level of significance sufficient for it to be an issue given the total pool of parking in the surrounding area.
Yes, that's a fair way to represent it, Commissioner.
I had a question. We've been through so many of these that, and I know at one point, as a planning commission, we were asking for more specifics regarding the actual parklet itself, and in terms of seats and tables and all that. And it seems as though, this was, pretty vague in terms of that. Have we gotten away from that? Is the direction from city council to us that, the parklet program has been approved? It's approved both through the state and through the city, and I believe through January 1st, 2026 by the state, right? And the city is following that too. So I guess one question is this application valid till next January and that's it?
Yes, that is correct. The entire parklet program is set to sunset on that date, which coincides with that state law that you were alluding to.
And I'm assuming the applicant team is aware of that because there's going to be some costs and everything in them doing this that's potentially is going away in a year.
Yes, they have been made aware.
Okay. And regarding the specifics about everything that's in that parklet, the application letter from the applicant itself mentions tables and chairs to have 20 to 26 patrons. And I counted, I believe there's 13 tables and 26 chairs that are kind of shown in the rendering of the space. And they mention in their application letter that there would be planters and fencing, but not specific about that. And then in the past, people have added heaters and umbrellas and lighting. Are we getting into any of that, or are we just leaving that kind of open for the applicant?
Well, first of all, Chair, I'll apologize if we missed prior Planning Commission direction regarding providing details on the specific fixtures that are to be placed in the parklets.
Yeah.
Regarding the planters, we did confirm with the applicant that the planters would be used as an additional barrier at either two short ends of the parklet, which is similar to what is done at other parklets throughout the downtown area. And that's really to provide additional visual separation between a parked car and the end of the parklet.
Okay. The only other question I had is I noticed in the materials that were given in the original initial application that this initial application was dated from April of last year. Why is it now? Why is it taking so long for it to come to us? It's January. Is it just general backup in the city's processing time? Was it something in terms of the applicant not providing information? It seems as though they provided a full application last April. And
I don't know that I have an answer to that question, Chair.
Okay, that's just the general lag time that's happening now in the city. I mean, I can understand because we hear frustration about people talking about, dealing with, the Department of Community Development, and I could understand that if I made an application for what I would think is something, relatively simple that's been done by a number of other applicants in the past, and why would it take more than 6 months to get that process through the city?
It's a fair question. Not something I'm able to answer based on the specific case here. Yes, across the planning division, we do have a backlog of planning applications. That was actually a subject of discussion at this week's city council meeting. We reported on the status of the backlog and our strategies to mitigate the backlog and essentially rebalance the workload. We talked through our goals, which are 30-day turnarounds for plan checks. It also addressed the 45-day target that we're committing to, and that's the date from which an application is cleared to the date that a staff report is prepared and approved. And that's the final step before we are ready to schedule that project for a public hearing.
Okay, I just noticed that date and I was a little surprised by that. I'm like, wow, that's really kind of a lot of lag time. I think they're processing. That's it. Any other questions?
Yeah, just to follow up on the design question, the standard issue parklet is what's going to be constructed here. And is that constructed by city contractors or by the applicant's contractor?
So that's a really good question. The city's Public Works Department takes the lead in the construction of the parklets, and they work with an outside consultant, contractors, so that way they all look the same and do the same design specs.
And regarding Commissioner Sadler's question about the furniture and all the various elements that seem to be added to the parklets, does the city provide a standard to the applicant? For example, I noticed here in the resolution, number 24, tents and canopies, if applicable, must have appropriate flame retardancy. Does that mean they're entitled to put up a tent or a canopy without coming back to us?
They would not be, no, since that was not represented as a feature, an improvement as part of their application. And for clarity, I would recommend that we strike that condition of approval.
Yeah, I agree. The lighting, so the lighting can be at the choice of the applicant, is what it sounds like. The furniture, the lighting, the heaters are all not guided by the city.
Correct. With maybe one exception for the lighting, the city does have a good neighbor outdoor lighting ordinance, and any lighting in the parklet would be subject to compliance with that ordinance.
Yeah, it sure seems like with the lag time since the submittal and now if this is approved tonight, then it needs to be built. It's just such a short window. It's too bad.
Quick question for staff as well. Does, provided, whatever happens tonight with this application, does the potential creation of 2 parklets in any way affect deliveries or trash pickup at that location that you know of? Or is that a better applicant question? But
city staff is not aware of any conflicts.
Okay, so because if we're eliminating the 2 spots in front of the restaurant itself, I don't know if they've utilized that for food deliveries and things like that. So if they were eliminated, that may impact that delivery process. Just curious if.
Guess we'll ask the applicant.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'll go open the public hearing, and to the applicant team, you have 5 minutes to tell us about your proposal.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Leo Metza. I'm the designer and the general contractor representing, helping my beautiful friend here, Mozart. But just to answer your question regarding abstracting any delivery access to the adjacent buildings or businesses, which is Finney's or his business, is a clear path. The entrance for both delivery doors that they have there. In regards to fixtures, we're not planning to have any fixtures or even lighting, just the plain parklet that will match similar to Salerno's. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And trying to beautify it with some planters and some plants. But yes, you're right. You know, the application was back to April, but right now we're way beyond that. So he just wants to make sure it takes advantage of this coming summer. And to make it fair for, is the only place that didn't really get a chance to put a parklet besides everybody else downtown. So I think, you know, I was hoping to get this done earlier, but right now this is where we are, and we'll do whatever it takes to go through this process. And, you know, again, the specs for the materials and design, whatever is in you know, to comply, to match exactly what the other places look like. That's no problem at all. And even if we need to, if it's required to hire a contractor that the city recommends, so it doesn't matter. We just get it done. And it's something that could get done pretty quick to begin with, so.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicants?
Do you, you know, I've only been to your restaurant like maybe once or twice since in the last 50 years.
I thought you were gonna say like this year.
I don't recall as far as interior seating, is there some, or is it mostly just takeout?
Again, the way we did the layout on the site plan is just to show the potential seating that when people go and get food and just, but you know, the type of seating, I mean, it could be when we go through, is it Public Works?
I think he's asking
No,
about
about
within the,
interior.
yeah, within the existing
Existing.
interior. You do
Oh,
have,
there's no-
you have some limited seating in there, isn't there?
7 seats.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, within, I'm sorry.
That was my question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
One bar with 7 seats on it.
And so putting in 2 of these parklets, you feel like you need 2 to accommodate your potential future customers, especially in the summer
It's
months?
just what happens during the summer, and you know, my office is right across the street, so I can see the amount of people that come in and how, you know, I've been telling them for a while to get this thing done, and I think this is the summer.
So in other words, 2 is the requirement
Yeah,
versus
for the
doing
amount of
1.
people that go there, yeah, I think that'd be the best for them to take advantage of this opportunity, yeah.
All right, thank you.
I have 2 questions. One is, and maybe, you know, this program's been around for like 4 years, and my daughter loves your restaurant and has drugged me down there a number of times, and it's always so frustrating because there's no place to sit. And so, although then you go sit around in the promenade and you activate the promenade, so it actually is, you know, kind of good for the promenade. So one question is, why'd you wait so long?
No, but first I talked to someone from the city like approximately 2 years ago. Yeah, I talked to someone from the city 2 years ago, and they said the program is going to be only for 2 years. So it was already 1.5 years passed. I say it's not worth it for 6 months. Then they say they make an extension another 2 years or 3 years. Now they say it's going to end on January.
So you're hoping for another extension, aren't you?
Yeah, kind of.
So my other question's even more important. Why do you not open until 1 o'clock?
There was a couple nightclub. One, it used to be the White House, but the White House, they don't do no clubbing no more. There was only the Marine Room on the back and a little bit far from us. And the other one.
So why do you open for lunchtime, for lunch?
Lunchtime?
You don't open until 1 o'clock.
Yeah, correct.
And why, when people want to have.
We start open early for you. The luck, because there was no employee. Like for certain time, it was very hard to get an employees over there.
Okay.
You know? Yeah. And concerning the trash, there's a specific area under the library for big trunk for the trash, so the trash cans. And there's a specific loading area, unloading for the big truck beside the library. There's a specific area for the loading. Unless like somebody Uber or something, he can grab something fast on the street, because the street is only one way. So it holds 2 cars passing each other. There was no problem, even if the parklet still existing there. And the parklet basically doesn't take the whole parking. It took like 2 feet away last. So when you put the fence, you still have 2 extra feet from the parking. This is the way they specified everywhere.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any members of the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and go to commissioner discussion. I'll start. I'm supportive of this project. I mean, you know, we at this point, there, you know, there's been some discussion within the city. Some people love the parklets. There's other people who really think that, you know, they're detrimental to their businesses by taking away parking and things like that. But it's, you know, it's been approved by the state and it's been extended, and the city has followed suit. And so other people have been allowed to do it, and I don't see why you should not be able to take advantage of this program as well. I don't know if other people remember, but in your space there was a whole series of restaurants that came and went over time, and none of them lasted for very long. And you have taken over that space and been successful, and you know, and been a good addition to Laguna Beach. I know a lot of the high school students and stuff love it, and it's one of the, you know, fewer lower cost options in town. And so you know, and it's good too. I've been there a number of times, and I'm supportive of the whole restaurant and supportive of this idea. And so I'm willing to approve it, and we'll hear what our other commissioners think. Commissioner Whiten.
Yeah, I support it also. One of the things I like about it is the kind of effect of moving some energy onto Park there, which has always just been kind of
It's dark and neglected.
dead. Yeah.
Correct.
And I never felt excited about the proposals for putting tables and chairs there that were floating around a couple of years ago. But I think this, because the parklet is an established thing, people know what it is and why to come. And it's for you, particularly in your case, on a street that's around the corner from where the action is, it's a signal, it's a flag that says, you know, this is a restaurant and we have seating for you out here. And the view is really terrific. So I think it's really frustrating that, you know, your application got hijacked a little bit by, you know, slowdown coming through community development. But hopefully, hopefully you recoup all your costs and more this summer.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dubin.
Yeah, I mean, I feel similarly. I think if you are okay with the idea that you're going to have this for less than a year at this point, you know, that's the decision you make. I agree with Commissioner White in terms of activation of that part of the street. It's always been kind of the dark alley, or I'll use the redheaded stepchild of Lower Forest, you know. So I know that the program is slated to be sunsetted in January 1st of 2026. However, there may be a possibility that City Council decides to either extend it or even make it a permanent program. So there is that possibility down the road. But as far as if you're willing to dive in for what is, you know, now less than a year, I think that's going to be a positive aspect to improving activity in that part of our town, and we need as much of that as possible. So I would be all for that.
I'm supportive as well. I think it would be great if it improves your business and it improves that street. So hopefully it's a win-win.
I agree. You know, I think it improves the street. It'll improve your business, gives some place for people to sit. And I know my last comment is I just think you need a little bit more white sauce on the gyros. It'd be perfect.
Okay, would somebody please make a motion?
And Chair, if I may, it was suggested that condition number 24 related to tents and canopies be struck from the resolution.
Okay. Commissioner Whiten, do you think you can find that?
By motion, Planning Commission adopts Resolution 24-2425, approving temporary use permit 24-2425 and coastal development permit 24247, and finding said action categorically exempt pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, Section 15304, minor alterations to land, and in the alternative, state CEQA guidelines, Section 15301, existing facilities, with striking condition number 24 from the resolution.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg,
Yes.
Chair Sadler.
Yes. Congratulations on your parklet. May you get it built quickly.
Yes.
That goes to the building department. That will take 4 minutes. Something that's basically a rubber stamp.
Okay, we will be, let me make sure it is the final item. I didn't blow this last time. The final item of the evening is agenda item 5.6 at 1199 South Coast Highway. And presenting this item tonight will be Sarah again. Start whenever you're ready.
Item 5.6 is a request for approval of a conditional use permit for the Ink Yard Tattoo Art Gallery. The subject property is located at 1199 South Coast Highway at the intersection of Brook Street and Coast Highway. The property consists of a through lot fronting both Gaviota Drive and Coast Highway. The property is developed with one mixed-use building fronting Coast Highway and one apartment building fronting Gaviota. The commercial space in question is located at the lower level of the mixed-use building on the corner of Brooks and South Coast Highway. The proposed use is located in the C1 Local Business District zone and will consist of establishing a tattoo body art facility with ancillary retail sales. According to city permit records, the property is legal non-conforming regarding on-site parking. However, staff has determined that the proposed business will not result in an intensification of use in which no additional parking is required. The proposed hours of operation are 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Tattoo establishments are regulated by Chapter 7.65 of the Municipal Code, which address health and safety requirements, including sanitation and sterilization of equipment. Staff has routed the application to the Laguna Beach Police Department and received no concerns regarding the application, nor have they received any calls for service at the business's prior location on Thalia Street or for any tattoo establishment within the last 2 years. The commercial space will consist of 2 service chairs and 1 private tattoo studio, dedicating 76% of the floor area to workstation, leaving 24% of the floor area for the lobby, back office, and art gallery. The retail sales are limited to Ink Yard Laguna Beach branded apparel and accessories, and original artwork will not be for sale. This has been clarified with the revised letter of intent that is included in the supplemental staff report provided in the agenda packet. The tenant improvements are limited to the repair and maintenance of the interior walls, doors, and floors only, and the applicant is not proposing any exterior modifications. It is important to note that the proposed use does not result in an increase of tattoo establishments within the city. The Ink Yard Tattoo Art Gallery was previously operating under a prior CUP approved on June 20th, 2018, located at 255 Thalia Street, Unit C. This exhibit demonstrates the locations of current tattoo establishments and their approved hours of operation. The Ink Yard Tattoo Art Gallery was previously approved for hours of operation 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. and is requesting to continue the same business hours. Staff finds that the proposed use is consistent with the findings necessary for the granting of a conditional use permit, and staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution and finding said action exempt from CEQA. That concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Any questions of staff?
So this is a relocation. So yeah, okay, just confirming that that's the former English Garden flower shop.
Correct.
As far as the ancillary retail sales, is that sweatshirts, t-shirt? I mean, what is the proposed line of ancillary products?
I know it's just limited to apparel, but I think the applicant could elaborate on exactly what will be for sale.
And at this time, he's not asking for a sign permit. And is there a reason why not at this point? And that obviously could be done administratively, I think, in the future. Is that correct?
Correct. At their prior location, they were approved for a window sign that was approved administratively, and as of right now, the applicant is proposing to use the same sign.
Okay, thank you.
So we had a discussion how many years ago about businesses that were permitted by right. And I'm trying to recollect, and I'm imagining the reason tattoo parlors are not permitted by right is the health and safety standards that need to be demonstrated. What is the reason for that?
That's probably a good assumption, Commissioner. It also predates my time with the city, so it's hard for me to say with any certainty. But in my 10 years here with the city, it has always been an unlisted use. And so the Planning Commission can approve an unlisted use subject to making certain determinations about the application. And most typically, the Planning Commission has found tattoo shops to be similar, no more obnoxious than personal service shops specifically.
Okay, thank you. It's hard to believe it was 6 years ago that you were here.
Almost 7. 2018.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
No questions? Okay. To you, the applicant, you have 5 minutes if you'd like to tell us about your business, or you don't need to tell us anything if you don't want to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to grow my business, and I was approached by the owner of the building that they were, very excited to see me doing a lot of renovations that have been a long time coming. The building's from the 1930s, so we have done a lot of work inside, just layers of paint and just fixing the walls. And so I'm just excited to see it being restored. I love to restore old vehicles, and this is just like a form of art for me to just make it beautiful again. So that's all I'm trying to do.
I noticed in the picture, one of the pictures showed that they looked like they had some old hardwood flooring or something in there. Are you keeping that or refinishing it?
I refinished it already. We sanded it and then just stained it. I'm keeping everything original. I'm not trying to do anything because that's kind of like everybody's favorite part of the building is the entryway has that nice fireplace. So yeah, I'm keeping it. Everything's just being restored, not changed, nothing, too drastic, because I kind of like the way it looks as it is.
Okay. And your former location, Onthelio, is right by where Circle K is, right? Okay,
Across the
that
street
was
from
that.
that,
Yeah. Okay, I remember that approval process. That was former Commissioner Ann Johnson was not in favor
Yeah.
of. It was one of the first kind of tattoo ones that came in, other than the really long established ones.
Yeah, and I was kind of referencing that because, Anne, who is an older lady, has a different sense of what tattooing is all about. And, she does, she's from another time and place.
Of course.
And that's why I asked the question about businesses by right, because I think there is a little bit of a carryover, a stigma about tattooing in not permitting this business to be, this type of business to be allowed by right. And so I'm searching for some legitimate reason that it isn't permitted by right. So I think, I mean, that's not the subject tonight, but I think we might investigate that a little bit further.
Well, any questions for the applicant? Anybody?
I'm just curious, is this a bigger space than you had before?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, the
Is it
space I
really?
had before, it was probably half the size.
Mhm.
So I wasn't able to have, I worked by myself for a long time because two of the rooms in the other facility were very small. So it was hard for anybody to work in there. It was, you know, space was limited. So with this location, I have a lot more space to be able to work from.
So we've added a tattoo parlor or two since you started. Have you seen that diminish your business?
Well, to be honest, I think a lot of tattoo shops in the last couple of years have, just like any other business, it's been pretty challenging for business. And I know that Local, they're closed now.
Mhm.
So they're closed, and so that eliminated one shop. And then, you know, for me, I have a good amount of, I've been tattooing for 30 years. So I have quite a bit of clientele that I don't really rely on, you know, a whole lot of what's going on in the industry as a whole. So, yeah, I'm confident that
So
everything,
you have a following.
I have a following, yes.
It says specifically that there's artwork in the inside, but that you don't want it to be for sale. Is there some reason for that?
It's not for sale because traditionally tattoo parlors, well, they were called tattoo parlors like in the 70s and 80s. And you would go in and there's a bunch of designs on the wall.
Mm.
To me, it's kind of tacky. I think it's better to have canvases of art that people can say, oh, I like that. I'd like to get that tattooed on me versus just picking random things that, you know, they just sell them as like, you know, just, you go into shops, they'd all have the same design.
Mhm.
You just pick it and then put it on. So I think like for me, my goal is when people walk in, they love that it's actually art hanging on the walls versus just tattoos, just a lineup of it. Because most shops have just flash everywhere.
So the art, just so I understand, the art
inspiration.
is for the tattoo.
It's inspiration for the customers
see.
because when customers come in, they go, wow, did you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Because I also paint, you know, airbrush murals and stuff like that. So I'm not limited to just tattooing. I've been doing multimedia art since I was 16 years old. So I think it's just more, like I said, it's more of a creative thing to just let people see now. Because like you said, at one time, like in the 70s and 80s, it was a kind of a rough market or like a business.
Mhm.
Now there's a lot of fine artists that transition into tattooing to where it's evolved to where you wouldn't believe the realistic abilities of people to do like portraits and stuff like that.
Mm.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
So besides yourself, you're going to have up to maybe 3 other artists?
Yeah, I plan on hiring a couple of other guys that worked with me before in the past. Yeah.
And just getting back to that ancillary retail sales, can you just,
Just shirts and hats.
Okay.
Nothing more than that. Just
Okay.
T-shirts and hats.
And it has the name of your
That's the
business?
name of the business. on the
Okay.
front. Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Great. I will ask any members of the public who wish to speak on this. Seeing none.
Only have 3 minutes.
I will close the public hearing and we'll go to commissioner comments and discussion. Commissioner Dubin?
I think, I'm impressed with, the evolution of, tattooing to what is now commonly known as body art.
Right.
And I have some former students of mine that are very skilled at, and some of the things they produce is pretty mind blowing these days. And I know that it's definitely transitioned from, back in the 60s and 70s where it was either military or bikers who
Right.
had tattoos and now, moms, dads, kids, I mean, well, not kids, but I mean,
I've tattooed women in their first tattoo in their 80s.
Yeah, so,
Believe it or
so
not.
it's.
We won't
it's-
ask you what that was.
It's become a very mainstream way of decorating your flesh, I guess, for
Yeah.
lack of a better way of putting it. So also, you know, I'm very familiar with that location because a friend of mine used to run the flower shop there. So
Okay.
and I don't know how long it's been vacant, but I know that the family that owns the Sandpiper and that whole complex, I'm sure they're very excited to have.
They're
And it feels like a good match to me to be
a
right
good
next,
marriage. It's a very
right
good
next door
marriage,
to the Sandpiper and.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging corner to be.
Dirty bird
you know.
tattoos.
Yes. So at any rate, I will be approving it. So thank you for your
Great, thank you,
devotion to your art.
thank you.
I think it's going to enliven that corner for sure. I mean, I think that's a fabulous interior space. It just, it
Yes.
keeps on going forever. And there's so much variety in the type of space and the up and down and so forth. I mean, it's really a cool, very private for doing tattooing
Yes.
kind of space. And you'll certainly, I mean, it's clear that you're not a walk-in sort of business, but people will certainly discover you by being in that location because that is a very, very busy pedestrian area. So did any of the neighbors come out and
Everybody's loved it.
That's
You know,
great.
Honestly, it was kind of a contagious thing to, like, when you see the neighbors fixing up their house, then you start doing some fixing up yourself. So it's like, once I started, you know, painting and renovating, everyone kind of got on board and I feel like it's livened up the whole corner, the whole property, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Good. I'll be supporting.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kellenberg.
Yeah, I have no more questions. I'm supportive. When I first saw it, I thought, are we going to have an issue of an additional, tattoo parlor? And I was relieved to see that.
No net increase.
No, in fact, we're having a net decrease. So, and not that there's anything wrong with them, but I know it is, and it can be an issue. And
Yeah, I definitely don't want more, more would be
yeah, so no, it's an easy support.
great. Thank
I'm supportive as well. Good luck.
Awesome.
And I am as well. Would it be appropriate for us to condition that the Sandpiper has to change their carpet?
You know, they do once in a while, but they just go get it out of another dumpster somewhere.
Yeah, maybe you'll inspire them to do a little, a little renovation of that place.
You'll be
Anyway,
surprised.
I'm supportive as well. If somebody would make a motion. Or maybe I will, because I haven't done one yet. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution, attachment 1, approving conditional use permit 24-2570 and finding said action is exempt from CEQA for those reasons as outlined in the staff report.
I'm honored to second that motion.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg,
Yes.
Chair Sadler.
Yes, you are officially approved.
Thank you so much.
All right. Good luck.
You guys have a great night.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for your patience hanging around.
Yeah.
I had 3 hours.
Okay, do we, we've got it. Look, we're going to get Steve out of here in time. All right, any other business?
Just one quick item, Chair. The Planning Commission should have received an email earlier today from the city manager related to a special joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council that is being set for February 4th, which is a Tuesday here in the council chambers. And the purpose of that meeting is to discuss the promenade plans and scope.
So that's been changed. It's been slated 2 other times and now it's changed again.
Yes.
Okay. I must have missed that one.
I hadn't seen that one
So
yet.
please update your
Yeah,
calendars.
okay.
So after the council meeting, it will come to Planning Commission for design review. Is that correct?
I personally haven't been involved in the promenade process, so I really can't speak to specifically just yet.
Or is the intent here that we would give planning commission comments at this meeting?
I believe the purpose of this meeting is to provide general comments in order to further refine the project. On this meeting, you will not be reviewing and approving or denying entitlements just yet. This is a concept discussion.
Okay.
There will be a staff report. I know that the landscape architects that are preparing the design will be showcasing the latest concept plan for the promenade. That's about all I know, unfortunately, but I'm also eagerly anticipating the debut.
Great. Okay, I guess we're moving on to commissioner stuff, but I guess we'll, unless somebody has something really important to say, I think Steve's on his way
I
out the
know
door.
Steve good luck.
Okay. All right, Steve, you're excused.
I have my usual 4 questions for staff. Any update on the Hotel Laguna at this point?
They are currently in building plan check.
Okay.
I know that Principal Planner Martina Carone is actually working on that this week, and part of that is processing. I believe there's a coastal development permit exemption that we're also filing on that project.
And is this still with the MOM group or whatever their title is?
That I don't happen to know.
Okay. Any update on our farmers and merchants perforated metal application?
No further updates at this time. There was, just for the benefit of the full planning commission, there were the perforated metal panels that were intended to accent a couple of corners on their facade. Those were fabricated. They needed to be shipped out to California for the installation. I know that at least one of those panels was damaged, and therefore it's back with the shop. So there has been a delay. Previously, the expectation was that the panels would be installed in December. Obviously, we've missed that date. At this time, they're working on correcting or refabricating panels for installation.
Actually, they were supposed to install in September was the original plan. So it's pretty far overdue at this point. I hope that they follow through and don't try to just pretend like they're not going to do it. So is there a start date to the Main Beach Park renovation that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can find out.
And Forest Avenue Mall, are they responding at all to the request to?
I know that's with code enforcement. I don't happen to know where that code enforcement action is at this time.
Okay.
To my knowledge, an application has not been submitted to the city. My expectation is that they will be taking corrective action to align with the Planning Commission's conditional approval.
What is that project?
That was,
They didn't follow their approval. What are you talking about?
so yeah, they were supposed to not paint the bricks and they were supposed to do accent trim on the building and they just blew it all off. And is there a time limit that, at some point that, I don't know what the enforcement issue would be other than to what you would retract their conditional use permit or something, or, I mean.
Yes, I mean, so there's a variety, and once again, I must state that I'm not intimately involved with this, so I'm going to remove it, so there's no prejudgment or anything like
I got
that. But yeah, so in cases of extreme code violations or entitlement violations, there's a whole host. One of them, of course, is CUP revocation. That would require
That's a pretty
a notice
major.
hearing. That's pretty major. There's other civil actions you can take. Sometimes people, for whatever reason, seem to take a court order more serious than, say, a letter from our office with potential contempt proceedings. But of course, there's always the calculus of the pros and cons of using staff resources and staff money for that. But there's kind of a handful of enforcement mechanisms.
Plus staff research what the status of that is and report back to us.
Absolutely.
Because it's an insult to the commission.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think after as months go by, it really becomes, I think, an affront to the city.
Yeah, I mean, tonight we had an applicant, a major applicant, who allowed their TUP to lapse. And, you know,
Right.
it's 3 months.
4 months.
4 months. And I mean, not to be punitive about it, but, you know, it's just basically the mindset in the city is just go ahead and do it because there is no penalty for this kind of thing. There's no penalty. And, you know, I think we should, you know, take some action, legal action, so that these things don't happen. Because when they happen, it takes everybody's time, it takes staff resources, money, taxpayers' money to follow up and blah, blah, blah. When the person who commits the offense should be paying the city, not the other way around. The city paying to enable the person to have a lapsed TUP. And the city is notoriously lax on doing this kind of thing. I don't know what the remedies are or whether it's even advisable, but it sure is frustrating, you know, for everybody.
Well, especially when there's clear direction from us as a body, and then they just ignore it, and then what? Nothing happens, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing, it's like with the Farmers Merchant Bank. I mean, they committed to do something, you know, and it's part of their approval. And then for them to consider not doing it is, you know.
And so once again, your guys' frustration is heard loud and clear. We want to hear it more. I want to be careful we don't speak too specific about a project that may come back before you guys, but
Yeah.
we understand the.
It shouldn't.
I know. Once again, I know. I'm hopeful it's not.
They're going to get
I just don't want
an earful.
Exactly. I don't want that.
We told them at the last meeting, you know, I even specifically said, you know, God help you if you don't follow through on this stuff. You know, don't come back in here.
Oh, man.
But
once again,
Well,
I don't think
I
we
guess
should.
we want you to create a little pressure on the appropriate department by finding out what's going on and pointing out that the commission would like a report, a status report.
You know, and there's stuff we don't know about, like the marine mammal thing and their, you know, them lapsing their TUP. But again, they should have had the foresight to know months before that happening that they were not going to make that deadline and should have started proactively dealing with it way in advance, you know. But
It's their responsibility to do that.
Right. I mean, because there is some authority where somebody goes, no, your TUP's no good anymore. You have to stop operating. You know. Kick out the marine mammals, you know, they got to go. You know?
Set them free.
So anyway, what back to the tattoo thing, there was somebody was saying they were mentioning one that had gone away or something.
Yeah.
Which?
It's the one by Spigot Liquor
Oh, okay, but not.
and between Sweetwater and Spigot.
But the guy who was recently approved, the one that was so controversial because it was close to the other one, they haven't opened. Any idea what's going on with that or?
I don't happen to have any knowledge of that.
Okay, because
was
you know that was
appealed.
such a big deal, and they got their approval, and then
It was appealed,
It's
and I don't remember what happened.
so maybe
But nothing has happened.
okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, are we finished?
Yeah.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Our next meeting.
Which is
February 5th.
I move that we adjourn to our next regular meeting on February 5th.
Second.
roll call, please. Roll call.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg?
Yes.
Chair Sadler?
Yes.
You got
And
it.
we are officially adjourned. Thank you all.